Mark, populist anger at I guess you'd call it an all-time high. Certainly, you've got neo-Nazi groups that we thought were disappearing, hate groups that we thought were disappearing, and all of a sudden, Obama's elected. We have a black man in the White House. We have the economy in shambles. We've got racial changes. We've got soaring public debt. We have these liberal initiatives that are regarded as fascist, or weirdly as fascist or socialist, depending on who you talk to in the Tea Party. What in the hell is going on out there?
Well, it's a remarkable scene. We just completed something we do every year, which is a count of various kinds of groups on the radical right. And what you just described is really what we found. I mean, a real explosion of various kinds of groups. We've got, hate groups at record highs. We've got anti-immigrant, hardline anti-immigration groups, grown by about 80% in the last year. And then most remarkably of all, we've seen this roaring back of the militias, or the so-called Patriot movement. These things have really exploded across the country, and all of that is in addition to other right-wing formations like the Tea Party that, probably can't rightly be considered extremist per se, but certainly contain those elements. So
I don't know how you could talk about the teabaggers and not think those elements are not all over those meetings. I mean,
well, I think they are.
I take the camera and pan the group, and you see everything that should scare the hell out of anybody who's thinking.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of racism in there, the groups. There's a lot of conspiracy theorizing about, New World Order doings and secret plans by Mexico to reconquer the Southwest and on and on. And there are also a lot of individuals, people like the former Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack, who come right out of the Patriot movement, but who are, in effect, being liaisons to the Tea Party world.
Now, you've got Louisiana Sheriff, of course. He's put together his own militia, 200 people he's armed with shotguns. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite something. So, I mean, these things are popping up like mushrooms after spring rain.
Why is it always the southern rim of the United States? I mean, what is it? I mean, if you take a look at it, I know, look, the real nut jobs, they head to the mountains up in the Midwest and the far West. But why do we have this springboard that seems to flow out of Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, North Florida? I mean, it's pretty predictable, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure that's really true. I mean, what I would describe it a little differently. I would say that there are certain parts of the radical right that are much stronger in the South, others that are much more rural or urban. Look, I mean, it's been really extraordinary. I mean, not only are we seeing these groups almost literally explode, but we are seeing and have seen over the last year and a half or so what looks to me like a real spate in domestic terrorist activity. Mostly attempted terrorism as opposed to completed, but almost all of it linked to the rise of a black man at the White House, almost all of it tied to anger over that, and that somehow representing some terrible change in this country.
Yeah, this whole sovereign nation movement. Have you followed? I mean, I know you followed. You've written about it. This group of people that say, "Look, we're going to secede individually from the United States. We're going to make our homes into embassies, and we're going to call ourselves diplomats. Therefore, you can't arrest us. We don't have to pay taxes. We're not required to follow any rules and regulations that the rest of the country are following." Even that is springing up.
Well, I mean, these are people from the so-called the sovereign citizens movement, which really is a part of the Patriot world. It's really a subset of the Patriot movement. And, as you say, these are people who, and let me say so people can understand who are listening to us, some very well-known sovereign citizens are Terry Nichols, guy who helped blow up the Oklahoma City federal building, murder 168 people, and the Montana Freemen, the people who engaged in, I think it was 98, very long standoff. I think it was an 81-day standoff with federal law enforcement officials up there. And the Montana Freemen tell you something interesting. There are various versions of the sovereign citizens movement. Many, like Nichols, just thought he could declare his non-citizenship in the United States, and after that he didn't have to pay taxes, he didn't have to have a driver's license.
Where does this come from?
Well, let me say where it originally comes from. Nichols may not have known this. The Freeman did, the Montana Freeman did. This idea really originates in a radical group of the 70s and the 80s, the Posse Comitatus, which is a desperately anti-Semitic group, as well as a racist one. And the basic idea is that there are so-called organic citizens. That would be white people who are placed in this country by God himself, and they have this organic, this God-given relationship to the land, which no government can interfere with. So we can't be bossed around. We white people can't be bossed around.
What if you're not organic? What if
then you are a 14th Amendment citizen, of course, referring to the constitutional amendment that made freedmen, former slaves, into citizens of this country. And if you are a 14th Amendment citizen, as they say, then you do have to pay taxes. You've got to do every damn thing the government wants you to do.
Okay.
So, it's this very interesting look at the society we live in.
You've got the Conservative Political Action Conference held this February, and it was co-sponsored by, a group we thought had kind of disappeared, the John Birch Society. They're the ones who believe that President Eisenhower was a communist. Tell us, what does that tell you when we have a group like the John Birch Society actually starts building more credibility?
I think it's remarkable. They were, as you said, they were one of a number of co-sponsors of the Conservative Political Action Conference that CPAC throws every year. It's worth remembering that back in the early 90s, CPAC actually came out and denounced a group called the Council of Conservative Citizens as a racist group and said they would not allow these people to set up a booth or to join in the CPAC conference. Today, I guess we're in a very different place. They're allowing the John Birch Society, which, as he said, had largely faded, but is a wildly conspiracy-minded, anti-communist, if you can believe it, organization.
And they're glad to have him there.
Yeah, and it's not only them. Another co-sponsor of CPAC is a group called the Oathkeepers, and this is a bunch of men and women in law enforcement, a brand new Patriot organization, men and women in law enforcement and the military who believe that the United States is about to impose martial law in this country, that Americans are going to be herded into concentration camps, and that we all, the entire nation, will be subsumed into some kind of socialistic New World Order. So, this is very far afield, obviously, from any kind of mainstream conservatism, and it's remarkable how little it has been called out. But while there is no, I agree, central charismatic figure, the reality is that these ideas, these completely groundless conspiracy theories, have aiders and abettors in the ostensible mainstream. And they are people like Sarah Palin, like Glenn Beck, like Lou Dobbs, like Michelle Bachmann, the congresswoman from Minnesota. I mean, these people say things routinely that are entirely false. Michelle Bachmann claims Obama is setting up political re-education camps to turn our children, all of them, into little Marxist robots. Lou Dobbs makes the claim that Mexico has a secret plan to reconquer the American Southwest. And it just goes on and on.
Well, and mainstream media picks that up because they really aren't mainstream anymore. I mean, they're struggling. I mean, we ask ourselves this question on this program all the time. Why do they get sucked into it? Well, it's economics. I mean, look, they're struggling. You have all the cables that are struggling. It's like who can outdo who on the spook crazy factor.